Lori was talking to.
It's always Lori's time.
So Todd, Leanne, and Judge Stromberg would not be able to make it today. So one agenda item on there that says Bell policy proposal, we will remove that and just leave it as safety and justice challenge updates, court reminder, and PSA implementation. So if there's to you all, I did not receive any corrections, so they'll be posted next week. There's no revision sent to me today, so we'll go ahead and approve those for January. All in favor, let it be known by raising your right hand. Any opposed? Okay. So the time has come for us to approve the JRAC, Justice Resource Advisory Council bylaw. As you know, we went from an MOU structure to a governing document that's a So, you want me to continue with the election?
I'll take it from here.
Okay, I have
So the next item is election of the vice chair. You should have received in your email the nominations that we have for vice chair. We have Sheriff Miller, Pat Freeman, Leanne Melton. So I'm assuming that they agree to serve if nominated. Have we confirmed that? Nobody? Okay. Aisha will take a photo of us. You want us to stand up and take? Okay. You don't have to come to the front to take it.
Filling in. Do I have to be in the picture?
If you just fill in, I guess
We don't
not.
gotta come up there?
Yes.
If we're not filling in, do we have to be in the picture?
But she wanted to put like our cartoon character.
You want us all up there?
Stick figure.
Yeah, I don't mind. Just a couple minutes to take a quick photo of the it in the advertising. Clear?
Yeah. I think we're good. There's somebody, Danny, can you come over some? Yeah, thank you. Okay. 1, 2, 3. Thank you.
What happens when you don't show up?
So, based on the tally, our Chief Public Defender, Leanne Melton, is the vice chair, so somebody let her. So the next item on the agenda business is Justice Services request for proposal, and Rachel's gonna give us an update on that.
Good. Handing out a copy of a RFP for proposal that Buncombe County is planning to issue later today. So the request for proposal or RFP process is part of how the county does procurement. Essentially, whenever we have services that are contracted out, funded by the county, and delivered by community-based organizations, we periodically operate these request processes to select the vendor. This RFP is quite expansive. It includes a lot of different components. It's an 11-page document, and I'll give you an overview of what's included in it. The RFP has 4 main components of services that Buncombe County is looking to renew contracts for, either with the current providers of these services or with new providers. An opportunity for other organizations to pick up or change what services they're delivering for the county. The first category is Justice Resource Center. That JRC section of work has some components within it, including case management, front desk and reception, diversion, which we have 3 different kinds of programs running up there for diversion, and career navigation. So Justice Resource Center is the first section. The second section is jail reentry. These are the embedded case managers and case management that happen within the county's detention facility. The third category is treatment courts. Buncombe County has funding for 4 different treatment or specialty courts, which are included within this scope, including adult drug treatment, DWI or sobriety court, family drug treatment court, and veterans court. And finally, the 4th category is related to DV or violence / IPV, which is intimate partner violence. The 2 pieces there are our batterers intervention program and the trauma-informed support. So it's quite a package of different services, providers that deliver these services for us. Now we've been in communication with them so that they're aware that this renewal process is underway. We've been in communication with the justice leaders that are dealing with these various programs so that we could use your input in designing the scope. And we will look to the members of this body for guidance and input as we move further along in the process. The RFP will be open until March 5th. And so we welcome anyone from this body or from community organizations to get in touch with us if you have questions, as we look forward to renewing these services and having them available as part of our continuum of programs in our new fiscal year, which is FY21, that starts in July. Does anyone have any questions about the RFP?
Any questions or comments or feedback on the process, or things that I got the opportunity at a later time to give feedback on how the selection works, but if you have anything you want us to take into consideration during the review of the proposals, you can share with Rachel at a later time.
We don't have the dates in the process nailed down specifically about selection, but what we've done in the past, and I think it has worked pretty well, is invite partners to be at the table to review and weigh in, interview finalists, that kind of thing, as the county makes its decision about these services for the next fiscal year. We thank you, that those of you that have participated in the past on some of these. It's been a little while since some of them have been bid out, and so we'll extend that invitation again.
Thank you, Rachel. The next item is driver's license restoration. Eric Jackson. Oh, I skipped it. You let me get tired of talking. No. SJC updates, Tiffany will provide those.
I'll be brief. And I'm going to pass this around for you all to sign in up front. We are officially finalized the court reminder cards that will be available at the magistrate's office, in the courtrooms, in the detention facility, public defender's office, and probably anywhere that you all think, the program office, of course, and anywhere else. If you want them on patrol, we'll print them out as well. But basically, it provides some information. I don't know why I'm holding on to it for you all. It goes over some tips about how to avoid arrest and showing up for court. And then on the other side is we have continuous court dates. People can keep the card on them or however they need to. As a reminder, Buncombe County was not able to implement a court reminder system countywide because AOC adopted one, and they're recommending counties to use that version. Pretrial services will have one for those that are assigned to pretrial, and it will be automated. For this one, we're encouraging citizens to sign up on the AOC website. We were able to create a shortcut, which is Buncombe County /court reminder, and it will go straight to AOC's court notification site. When Jessie Smith was here last week, she noticed or compared the difference between when citizens do it on their own as opposed to staff initiating it. So I would encourage staff to get savvy and doing the court reminder and hoping people sign up, especially on the this is new. Just go to the website and help our community or those that are having court dates sign up for it electronically. One thing to remember too, you have to know the file number, and if it switches from district to superior court, you have to put in the superior court file number. So it doesn't notify once a court date has been moved to superior court. So it is going to take the help of us professionals to make sure that we can help people sign up to make it most effective. Definitely shown that court reminders work. Just like for me, it works for the doctor's office and all my other appointments. So if we can get people signed up on it, that's one step to probably reducing our FTAs that we have. Any questions on this? It will be smaller, half page. You can fold it.
What's the timing on getting in?
How long does it usually take? If we're approving this today, how long does it usually take?
Is law enforcement, because most of the time court monitors come from people missing citations and tickets.
Because I know we will want some.
So let's, I guess law enforcement has to have a conversation if that's something willing to print how much we need to, what that process looks like, make sure that we have some available, thinking maybe print 1,000 to start off with, and we can disseminate it as wide as possible.
Is this the actual size? Is that what, or is it?
It'll cut off the whites, so
Yeah.
it'll be a half page. We tried it on business card, the font was so small, you needed a magnifying glass to read it. So Lee did try it, put it in his pocket on the half page, slide in pockets. So, and I think we can work with the printing company and have the paper kind of pre-indented to make it easier to fold. That's one strategy or one thing we can check off of our Safety and Justice Challenge implementation plan. And hopefully we can start looking at FTA data and stuff to see impacts it may have. It'll be a little bit hard, pre-trial will be a little bit easier to tell because the information is automated in their case management system.
The number that you said seems a little low. How many could you use in?
For the 900 of the 1,000.
Okay.
No, not really, but, I mean, when you talk about, you know, we remind them of pending charges because we get those AOC alerts anytime they get, and they go directly to our prevention. Then you have district and superior court dates, so, I mean, it's significant enough that I would like.
What's the caseload at any one time in the office?
Well, we have 2,240 currently on or post-release now. So the average caseload is about 100, it's supposed to be 40.
I would say too, an average like district court docket would be somewhere between, and that's not always one person, but you're probably looking at on average 100 different people, especially in like a courtroom 1A.
If you just look at like admin, which we do once a month, which in theory is like first setting of cases for the week.
I was gonna say 5,000.
I'd do 5,000, you'll get a break in price.
You will definitely do that. Well,
That sound good?
do you guys have any law enforcement, any ideas of?
Probably 10,000.
Are you gonna give it to us? What do you think?
The only problem with that, they won't have a court or a case number yet.
Right. I was thinking they come in, but, we won't have a case number.
Would it be helpful to design something custom for law enforcement?
They got to have that case number to
Yeah,
log it
because-
into AOC.
I mean, I think the front part is good. The back part with the date and time, it's already on the ticket. It says you need to show up on this date at this time. So, I mean, this information on the front might be nice to do, but we don't have the court docket and all that kind of stuff.
But you do have the initial court date.
The court date's on the, yeah.
So maybe a custom version that refers you to look at your ticket.
Yeah.
To get the date and time, maybe
Well,
show
there's,
some how
there's
to find it.
the NC Court's website, you know, once the ticket gets listed into that, which happens, what, in a matter of a week, probably, for
Whenever
both
they
of
turn
those.
them in.
Yeah, whenever they turn them in, the CR number's there, once it gets to that point. It's when the officer's like giving out the ticket, there's a lag of, I don't know, you know, 2 weeks or whatever it may be.
So what it actually have you do is, if you don't know the file number, it redirects you to where you can pull up your file by, you search by defendant name. But the thing is, that's open. That's just to get a notification, so.
What qualifiers do they have to put in to get to put in their CR number? And I'm only asking, is it information that my officers already have that they can go, if they come in and set it up, I'm just gonna tell them to do it for them?
Yeah.
Because then they just get the reminder, but I didn't know how the system worked after you sign in.
Phone number.
Is that it?
And a permission,
Okay,
allow us to.
that's easy enough.
So that's why it's very staff or whoever in whatever office is doing it with
Right.
people.
I mean, that should be very helpful for us. That's right, we don't even have to ask. You're getting a reminder. We would never do that, but.
The other reason the PSA implementation, so we, Buncombe County, through the funding, has hired 6 pretrial screeners. I believe they're operating 24/7 at this point. Are they? So they're 24 right around the in booking, getting the PSA reports done. Currently, the magistrates aren't getting the information. They're doing QA on them, on the actual reports, and preparing them for first appearance. So, and they're still doing their interviews and stuff like that. The goal is to have the magistrate information, kind of not really in real time, but shortly after they make their initial decision. But we will set a launch date for when the PSA will be provided to the magistrates once staff are fully trained. You know, we had to hire them, train them, and now this is the new process. Invited Jesse Smith to kind of give everybody the foundation about what pretrial policy should reflect and look like as one of the strategies as we look towards informing or improving our criminal justice system. I believe Judge Hill and Judge Thornburg need to review, make sure it's in alignment with their direction and leadership, and then hopefully we'll have that done, and the magistrates will start getting the PSA information. You all are provided with the Safety and Justice Challenge budget, and many of you have heard that 4 sites were awarded additional funding, and that's because they were invited back after cohort 1 and 2. We are cohort 3, so we might hear from them, the foundation, in the next 6 months to a year. We're just now in year 2, so just know that that additional money went to those sites who had already been in the challenge a little bit longer than us and probably ran out of their money and their time. Any questions related to the challenge? Thank you for giving me feedback on the court dates, and I'll sit down.
So now we'll hear from Eric Jackson, driver's license and restoration.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
My name is Eric Jackson. I manage the data and analytics program at Buncombe City. And I want to start with a little background about why I'm here, other than the fact that I'm a very smooth operator and able to do things. So the city of Asheville is part of a program called What Works Cities, which is funded by the Bloomberg Philanthropies Foundation. And what Works Cities does is work with cities all over the country to help them use data and evidence to better serve their residents. We've been working with a number of partners they work with to provide technical assistance. The Center for Government Excellence we've been working with at Johns Hopkins works a lot with data and evidence-based policy making and programming, and they're the ones relevant to this one. The Government Performance Lab at Harvard Kennedy School. They tend to work with cities around procurement. One of the things GovX does is they put out classes on all sorts of things, data governance, performance, but they've started something that county. And so we're inviting you to participate. We reached out to Tiffany and got together. So one thing I should point out is the city's role in this is we're part of What Works Cities. We're the mechanism by which this is being delivered. We're essentially operating as but we have quickly gathered together a pretty good coalition of partners who are working on this just to learn, and I'll kind of tee up at the end where this might go. But we have folks from different agencies. We've got a number of logging into the calls that we have every week and on the listserv to learn about what we're doing. So I want to quickly go over, and I'm by no means the expert on this, but I want to quickly go over kind of what the problem is, what Durham's doing, and how that translates. And the basic issue is, in North Carolina, and as you can see in a lot of states around the country, we use suspension or revocation of a driver's license as an enforcement mechanism when people either are unable to pay fines and fees or don't show up for court. The problem with this, if I get one of those, then I pay my fine and I'm kind of done. But the problem is that if your situation is that you're really kind of living on the margins and it's difficult for you to pay, and you may have to make a choice between paying that fine and something else, then they don't pay. And as a result, there's a mandatory, essentially permanent suspension of the driver's license that happen. You lose your license, and then you're kind of faced with the choice. Do I drive illegally and keep my job or get a job, or do I not drive, but then that leads to all kinds of other problems because it's very difficult to operate without a license. If I choose to drive illegally, then I'm likely to get stopped, and now we're piling on more fines and fees and increasing the jail population, which is, of course, one of the issues that we're trying to deal with here. This is essentially the same information for those of us who are less visually oriented. Talking about this cycle where once you get started, and I'll show some data from Durham that about how long this can go on, once you're kind of in that hole, it's very, very hard to get out. Unsurprisingly, this tends to disproportionately impact communities of color. This is, I just stole almost all my slides directly from What Works Cities. So this is at the national level, and we'll get into some Durham data that's relevant to this. And one thing I want to point out, I'm sharing the Durham data here because we don't have it for Buncombe County. Dr. Creighton there is working to get the corresponding information here. It's coming from the administrative offices of courts, DMV, jail data, and so on. That is in process, but we don't have that data yet. So in Durham, they looked at two different kinds of information. One is just straight data, as I said, from the various sources. They have 46,000 people who were in this situation in Durham County. They also went out and talked to the people who were impacted. And it's important just to understand the underlying issues that you combine the raw numbers with the stories behind those numbers. And probably want to do something similar here. But where it comes to is that in Durham County, 20% of the adult population had a driver's license suspended or revoked. And 80% of those people were people of color. And, to the point of, that's a huge impact on the community. And then, of course, that turns around and impacts the system as well, because that was the 7th most common charge for somebody ending up in jail. So now we're increasing jail population, we're increasing the impact on the community. And if you start to dig into the data a little bit more, this is I believe, primarily just the data on failure to pay. So 14,000 of that 46,000 are failure to pay. Again, disproportionately impacting lower income neighborhoods, neighborhoods of color. Really, really striking statistics though, and this left out. The average age of the ticket was over 16 years old. So this is not revenue that's going to be collected. There's zero chance that revenue is going to be collected at this point, and yet it continues to have an impact. When you look at the larger contribution from failure to appear, which happens a little bit further down the cycle, just a couple of interesting points. Most of the people who are in this situation are working age, so this is it's not 16 years because everybody aged out and no longer drives. It's just a long-term problem that hangs around, and of course the usual one of the things that happens is you quickly get the objection. If you start to not do this, what about safety? What about safety on the streets? And so if you look at the underlying data, the charges, the vast majority here have nothing to do with driving while impaired, reckless driving, things that are directly tied to safety. You have some, fair number of speeding and lots of compliance issues where people are going into the cycle, not as a result of being unsafe on the road, but as a result of a compliance problem, which often is tied to an economic problem in the first place. So, I was lucky enough to kind of meet up at a conference with the Durham I team when they were just getting started on this. They had already decided to kind of zero in on reentry issues. They decided as they talked to residents and other stakeholders in the community, they quickly figured out that restoration of driver's license was probably the biggest bang they could get for the least buck. And so they started looking at what they could do. And one of the advantages for us in participating in this, there's about 16 cities around the country in this cohort doing the sprint. We just get to copy stuff straight from Durham because we're in the same state. Everybody else has got to figure out how to map it to their laws. But like Durham, city has very little direct role in any of this. They had very little role. They're kind of operating in a context that means that the only way this happens is through a collaboration between all of the agencies involved. And so they started looking at who plays what role in the process. So you can see, obviously law enforcement comes in on some entry points, but then everybody at this table then plays a role. DAs are probably one of the most important players in this, the judges, defender, clerks. And so they started looking at, for each of these, how do they play and what are the roles? So, for example, the district attorney has some ability, and there's a ton, in fact, I think the slides have later on some of the details of which statutes allow the DA to just dismiss proactively and which have to go through more of a process. But there's a role for everybody. One of the things they quickly discovered, and I think the point here being, it's really good to think about in advance who all needs to be involved. They had great participation from a number of stakeholders. They forgot to include the clerk of court, who was then required to handle massive amounts. They have dismissed or processed literally tens of thousands of these old charges, and they quickly faced a bit of pushback from the clerk's office, and so they had to stop and kind of figure that out. So it's really important to get people involved early on in the process. And of course, one of the other things to point out is, through all of this, the city, the county, the DA's office are not restoring driver's license. That's the DMV, but they're clearing up the underlying charges and issues so that people can go and then get their licenses restored. So, the point today is just to let you all know that this learning cohort is going on. My understanding from Tiffany is that you'll be hearing relatively soon from Mecklenburg, which has also implemented a program like this. Over the next 4 to 5 weeks, we're going to be wrapping up this sprint, and the group that's been participating will put together a quick summary of findings. All of the materials and resources that we've gotten access to, we'll put on a site to share for people to use. And as I said, Dr. Creighton is working to get the data so that we can start from the actual data relevant to our community. But then at that point, it's handed over to you to take forward. So I'm happy to answer questions, although I'm probably the least likely person to have the answers. Or Tiffany, if you have any.
is there anything you wanna add before we move forward?
No, I think the thing about, for Mecklenburg, Judge Hill and Todd reached out to their, is it a Judge Trosh? Is that her name? Yeah, I think there's a date maybe set for March 13th. So it won't be at the JRAC, but something similar to how Jesse Smith came and they'll just talk about their process, a little bit different from Durham, so, that's all I really have.
So Tiffany will send out a confirmation of date and time with you and location when she has it, if you're interested. We have Christy from Health.
Hey. So some of y'all may have been part of a presentation done yesterday with Buncombe County stakeholders about the budget cuts and how that might affect the behavioral health urgent care at 356. I don't know if all of you were there, probably not. So I have some talking points. I'm going to read them so that I don't go rogue and say something wrong. So the General Assembly continues to reduce funding for the uninsured population to via and across North Carolina. You probably all know that. Since 2015, the General Assembly reduced statewide funding for individuals without insurance by $494 million, and VIA has received $41.3 million in cuts to our state-funded budget. So due to this, we absorbed a lot of the cuts over the years, but we're no longer able to sustain the same level of services that we have. So we are in the process of reducing services. One of the services being reduced is the behavioral health urgent care operated by RHA at 356 more. Sustain it. It's been a 24-hour program. We're proposing to cut it back to 8 a.m. to 8 p.m., but it has to be approved by our board, and that approval will happen, or denial, on the 20th of this month. We expect them to approve some sort of cut to the BHUP, but we don't know how much or when, but we'll know more after the 20th. But some level of cut will happen to that program and some other programs, but that one affects you all the most. And to steal his line, if you have questions, I probably can't answer them, but I'm happy to write them down and get back to you.
So a couple of us did attend that meeting. Full disclosure, I am a board member provider, and so just to rewind back a little bit, we had some discussions at our board retreat about the funding implications and the concern with the level of service that we have at BHUBs. So at the board meeting, we decided to, Health was good enough to schedule convene a meeting with folks in the system. The hospital invited the county. I don't know if y'all got an invite, y'all probably, but invited other partners to discuss the concerns that they have from a budget perspective. Based on that funding gap, they're looking to BHUB hours, which essentially there are two BHUBs that they're reducing hours for. Of course, the one that impacts us is 3, yeah. And Buncombe County is by far the highest utilizer. We do have some outlying counties that utilize the BHUB, but it will impact our county the most. Based on the data that they showed us yesterday, impact will likely be emergency rooms. We have impact to the enforcement line. It surprised me when I saw the numbers. They don't utilize the BHUB that much, so you may not see large diversion impact. And we'll let you know what happens.
Can I comment?
Yes.
I think the one thing too, it's a theory, so it's not data or anything. Even though law enforcement drop-offs are compared to the other type of referrals. It doesn't account for the service being available after hours that prevent law enforcement interaction in the community. Because they're in a safe place, sobering up, or, patients were